Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the I Am 1-2 podcast with your host, Christopher Cohn. With me, as always, in the studio is the man that makes all the magic happen. We call him Dan the Man. You might call him friend. Dan the Man in the studio. Say hello to the people out there.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show today.
So glad to be back with you all, and thank you for joining us. Today, we're going to talk about navigating other people's opinions about your condition. Whatever that condition might be, we have the disease of alcoholism and addiction. We also have other conditions, but isn't it funny how everybody tries to come out of the woodwork to help you, and most of them are hurting you with their opinions. So we'll get to that in a minute. For those of you who are new, we'd like to welcome you to the podcast. This is a Everything Recovery podcast. We do emphasize the 12 steps, and I'm going to tell you why. If you can tell me through email, and we'll give you that later, any other methodology that changes a person as fast, as effectively, and as dramatically as the 12 steps does, I would like to know about it. I know people who've been studying Buddhism and other religions for years, and they haven't changed as much as somebody who does the 12 steps, or people who do yoga forever, or people who follow meditation practices, or whatever it might be. There is something unique about the cleaning house process of the 12 steps that you see a person start from not that likable to a really compassionate, more emotionally acceptable, spiritually attuned, and in touch person. And it's really unique, and it's easy to do. It's simple to do. We're going to have a book coming out at the end of the year for everybody. There's 12 steps for everybody. But, you know, support and the meetings and all that, it really is the greatest way to live on earth. And I know Dan would verify that. Right, Dan?
Hell yeah.
Just didn't want to speak for you.
Yeah.
Because we're going to these meetings where people are sharing their real experiences. This isn't theory. This isn't out of a book. This is what I tried and it worked, and this is what I did and it didn't work, and it blew up in my face. So join us is what we're here to tell you. We're here to spread that message, and you can begin your journey of recovery anytime you're ready. And you might say, recovery from what? From this world that is just upside down. Everybody thinks it. Everybody says it. But how many of us are working to save ourselves? And guess what happens when you do that? When you save yourself, you grow, and you get the opportunity to save another person. And that's what happens in our program. So join us. We're happy to have you. So today we're going to talk about people's opinions and ideas and trying to help you with your condition. You know, as soon as you come out to the world, you know, we do have an anonymous program, and we do advise that you probably keep it to your select few people when you're first getting sober who you're going to tell that you're doing recovery, because, oh my Lord, the minute the word gets out, watch all of your old Facebook friends you haven't heard from years. Watch the neighbor catches you while you're mowing the grass. The postman drops off your letters. They all have an opinion about alcoholism or addiction or whatever your medical condition might be that you're recovering from. And I'm here to tell you, most of them suck. And in our field, the opinions I hear my patients being told from their families, doctors, etc., they're going to kill them. This is not a joke. Those opinions are going to kill them. So you want to be very select who you're going to choose as your teachers and who you're going to listen to that is properly credentialed and properly qualified to give you advice about a disease that will kill you deader than dead, as my old sponsor would say. My old sponsor, whose daughter was killed by this disease, says, this disease will kill you graveyard dead. Do not kid yourself. So, do not listen to idiots. Let's get clear about that today. We're going to help you navigate that. So there's a couple of quotes I was taught very early in recovery, and some of them you heard before, and a couple of them I had heard before, but they really came in use to me as I was navigating my own journey through recovery. So I'm going to share a couple of these quotes. The first one, very familiar for most people. Opinions are like, I'm going to use a nicer word, buttholes. Opinions are like buttholes. Everyone's got one and they all stink, right? Okay, so that's one. And, you know, how nobody would really offer advice on something that is so far beyond the realm, like you have, you know, I don't know, cerebral palsy or something, you know. I mean, maybe they would, but who would dare? But when it comes to our disease, alcoholism and addiction, doesn't everybody seem to have an opinion? Don't you see that, Dan?
Yes, I do.
It's really odd. It's just, I don't know where that comes from. So the other quote that has served me extremely well in recovery, better than the first one, is consider the source. Consider the source means take a second look at who's saying what and why they might be saying it. How do they live? What is their walk through life? How do they treat other people? And if you look at them and you say, you know, I really don't agree with the kind of program you're working, and I really don't agree with the way you're walking through life, then why am I listening to you? You're not my teacher. I don't want what you have. And by the way, that's a key phrase for us in recovery. Pick a teacher who has what you want. And you ideally want to be more compassionate, more kind, more patient, whatever that thing is you're working on. The other quote is from Emerson, the writer and philosopher. And I to this day, it just appeals to me for its profoundness. It says, what you are saying, or what you are, sorry, I'm going to blow it. What you are speaks so loudly I cannot hear what you're saying. And all you got to do is look at them twice. Who's coming down on you? Who's giving you that opinion about what you need to do about your fatal illness? And why are they doing that? Be very careful, because I'm going to give you some examples here of people that have hurt my patients. And sometimes I never see my patients again after they took these people's advice. So it's dangerous out there. Be careful. So I was going to share a little bit about a medical issue, which, without specifying details, of course, I don't want to get into all that jazz. But I came down, or I just acquired, I don't know where it came from, nobody knows where it comes from, a medical condition about 4 years ago or so that just knocked me on my ass. And it was debilitating. It was extremely scary, and immediately I'm like, what the hell? And I go to the hospital, and don't know what we're dealing with, and I start they tell me to go to this doctor, and I go to this doctor, and he doesn't know any more than what I'm reading on the internet. And they say to stay away from internet, looking up your medical stuff, and I agree. If you're not sure what you're dealing with, be very careful, because you'll convince yourself you're dying from something that you don't have. However, I'm a firm believer that the internet has blogs and has people's personal experience that is way more than what doctors are getting. Way more. And by the way, your doctor can't even keep up and probably doesn't read any of the most recent medical data that they're being sent in the journals and stuff, because they're too damn busy, especially your PCP. We have a lack of primary care doctors in this country, and they're so busy getting you in and out of the office, they don't have time to read medical journals and keep up. So I'm taking information into my doctor. So immediately, out of the goodness of their heart, and I really don't believe people are coming from any other place, except those that want to sabotage you will also deal with those assholes too. But I had people coming at me and giving me all kinds of ideas, like maybe it's because, a storm front's coming in, a change of the weather. Maybe that's why you're having this condition. Or maybe it's because, I have this Japanese water that's worked wonders for me. You should drink this Japanese water. And these are actual suggestions. And then I had somebody say to me, who's very dear to me, and I respect this person very much, it's the magnetic pull of the tides and the moon. Have you ever checked out the planets? And maybe the planets being in a line, and that's got something to do with whether you're having an attack. And I'm just like, just stop the madness. Y'all remember that? Stop the madness, Susan Powder. Holy crap. And, I was getting very frustrated with all that. And again, I realized they're just trying to help. They feel powerless. They don't want to see you suffer. They want to share their experience. And if they know anybody who has somebody knows somebody who has something, they want to see if they can help you. But I took very much consolation in that I finally came across a very famous rock star that I'm going to not mention his name, but he's out there with his condition, and it ruined his career. It sidelined him. He's no longer able to play and or be in his band, and he went everywhere. And to hear him explain it in the interview, he says, "I have money, folks. I went to the top places all over this world, including Mayo Clinic, Johns Hopkins, and he named them all off. He says that I went through every test and every procedure and every little thing they told me to do, pricking me, prodding me, questioning me, doing all the things they're doing to me. And I went through all that and spent all that money. And at the end of it, they all came to me and said, don't know what to tell you, because they don't know. And sometimes they just don't know. They know a little bit. They have some suspicions. They have some, what they call that, hypotheses. But no, they don't really know. So we do know with this disease, alcoholism and addiction, what works and what doesn't, though. And so that's why you want to be very careful who you're listening to. Because, again, Japanese water and the moons and the tides and the planets is not going to solve your alcoholism or addiction. I'm sorry to tell you. It's just not going to work. All right, so moving forward.
Perhaps Mercury is in retrograde.
Murphy's Law, man, I had a patient talking about that over and over, and I'm like, well, talk about programming. Like that's even a thing you would even know about, It It's in our folklore, right? Again,
Yeah.
but it's not a real thing. It's not like this sphere is a real thing. You know what I mean? Not Murphy's Law, except for if you believe, or walking under a ladder, or Friday the 13th, or a black cat crossing your path, right?
Superstitions and traditions.
All right, so let's start at the top of the food chain. I'm going to tell you all out there, if you're new in recovery, don't assume that your doctor or psychiatrist knows anything about addiction. Now, in my experience, they'll all claim that they do. I handle people with addiction. I deal with this all the time, blah, blah, blah. But you have a right as a patient, believe it or not. If you have the balls, a lot of us don't. But if you do, you can ask your doctor exactly what their credentials are. Do they have actual training in addiction medicine? Do they have a certificate? Do they have a diploma? You can actually ask those things, right? And if they don't, they're talking out their ass. They're using hearsay. They're saying, oh, I saw this doctor do this. I think I can do this. They're not really truly qualified. And in my field, the clearest sign of your best doctors are the ones that know when to refer out. That is what we're taught. If you're outside your scope of practice, you can share some experience, but you need to refer them to somebody who specializes in that. So I'm going to give you an example of that happened in my group. One of my patients was a terrible alcoholic, and they're seeing a psychiatrist on the side that was taking them out of group. I don't like that. I don't like interruption in care. It destroys a person's treatment process. But we work with that. And this psychiatrist gave this alcoholic patient Valium to help them. I'm sorry, I thought Valium was an addictive drug. What are we doing here? Not only is it an addictive drug, it's a depressant. It's in the same exact family as alcohol. When it hits your nerves, your receptors in your brain, it hits the same receptors that Jack Daniels does, and your brain doesn't know the difference. So what you're doing is you're tickling that little receptor and not giving it what it really wants. If alcohol is your favorite, and guess what happens? It gets mad, and it bugs you more because it says cravings more, cravings more. You just gave me a little taste. I want the whole thing. And guess what happened to my patient? They disappeared out of group, and I've never seen them again. From being treated by our medical community, I want to make that clear. A licensed practitioner caused that relapse. I don't blame it on my patient. Although my patients know what they're using. It always cracks me up in group when they try to tell me. I say, well, what did the doctor give you? Not really sure. I got to go look at the bottle. And how many milligrams? I'm not, didn't look, I'm like, are you out of your mind? Dan, when you were using, what's the first thing you're looking at on that label? If you get a prescription for something you think might be good.
It's amazing what you learn to read on them labels. You know exactly what you're getting every single time.
The exact milligram, correct?
Exact milligrams, and no matter whatever the brand name or the generic is on the bottle, you know what it really is.
So it's so funny. My patients think they're being coy when they do that, and I'm like, nailed. Now I know you know what it is, and now I know you're up to no good.
So the right answer would be Valium 10 milligram or whatever they are.
Yeah, exactly. And, should I be taking this? No, stop.
I have a benzodiazepine.
Stop. And some of the crazy shit I've heard from doctors, even at my own hospital over the year, folks. And again, they mean well. I don't have an axe to grind. I've got your back. I'm here to educate you and enlighten you. What did I say at the beginning? Don't assume that your doctor or psychiatrist knows how to treat addiction properly. So, some of the things I've heard. After my patients do perfectly normal alcoholic addict patient behavior, they've said this to me. Why did they do that? Christopher, why did they do that? I don't understand. Dan, why did they do that? I'm sitting there going, 'cause they're an alcoholic? Is this a trick question? Now, let me flip the question. Would they ever say that about a schizophrenic having an episode in inpatient? Sam's shaking his head no.
Nope.
Of course not.
Forgot this is audio.
Yeah. I have to pull Dan in every now when he drifts. No, of course not. And nurses will do the same thing. They'll get angry at my alcoholic addict patients for doing detox, upset, irritable, restless, discontent behavior. And it's like, that's what they do. They're in detox. Not saying they can break the rules, not saying they don't need to be corrected, but saying have a little understanding. But again, if a psychotic is having a break and is like acting a fool, they're like, oh, well, Dan, he's a psychotic. What are we thinking? I mean, of course, it's a mental hospital. That is one of my favorite phrases my boss says all the time. He goes, remember, we work at a mental hospital. Because it's funny how people forget that. They'll be like mad at a patient. It's like, you're not supposed to be mad. You're supposed to be professional. So again, why would they do that? It's just sit there and shake my head. Why would they not go to their meetings? Why would they not do this? Why not? Well, because they can't. They're powerless. But boy, try to have a discussion with a doctor about powerlessness, Dan. We're talking about good luck with that.
Yeah.
So for a lot of these people, and we're going to go through these categories, I give you the doctors first. It's not just a lack of understanding, because a lot of them are educated. You know what I find it to be, in my personal opinion? It's a lack of accepting that it's a disease, right? They know, they've heard all the information, but there's still this hangover effect that addicts and alcoholics are bad people doing bad things and they need to be punished. Now, I get it. We're talking hundreds of centuries that this has been done to our people. So it's not going to change overnight. But it was a while ago that they established medically that it is a disease. 1956, the American Medical Association took it up as their topic for their conference that year of the one thing they always choose to focus on and make a decision as a group as to whether it's real or not and how we treat it. And they came out saying, it's chronic, progressive, primary, and fatal. That's the same as cancer. It's a disease. That's all there is to it. Yet I'll still hear people, God bless him, I love the hell out of Gabor Mate. I think he's a genius when it comes to trauma treatment. But he's outside his scope of practice when he says things like this is not a genetic condition. He should not say that. He's not one of us. That's number one. Number two, it's not his field. It's not his field to qualify for sure, whether he's a molecular biologist or geneticist or whatever it takes to do that. I don't think he's qualified to say that. But I know how passionate he is about trauma, and what he's really saying, I hear him saying, is we're overlooking the role, how major a role trauma is. I know that's what he's advocating for. But I have to be careful about that. Just don't go saying things where it's like, really? What, are you way outside your scope here or not? Because then people begin to think, well, maybe it's not real, and maybe it's not powerless, and maybe it's not a disease if it's not genetic. Maybe it's just a braining thing that these people had terrible things happen to them as a kid. No, I'm going to tell you the truth about this addiction. If you're alcoholic or addict, you have a brain wiring that is definitely genetic from birth. I mean, I have talked to more people in 41 years of walking this deal, and they all say the same shit, same crazy shit, the way they think, the way they feel, the way they have their experience of the world. It's identical. It's like we're all the brother and sister of another mother. It's astonishing. And yet, this is why the meetings work. Because when we get together, we actually relate. not on because we all drank, but because we think today, because we're all fucked up in the head in the same way. So, again, just be careful about listening to certain people. Again, 1956 decided it was a disease, and here we are still debating this crap. It's no longer up for debate. It's settled. And I always tell my patients, if anybody's out there struggling with your parents or your job or anybody else that doesn't get it, tell them this one phrase will get you out of all trouble. Insurance has to pay for it. What part of that don't you understand? I can't get my insurance to pay for a pedicure. Be nice. I can't get my insurance to pay for a massage. Wouldn't it be great, Dan? Full body massages paid by Anthem.
Should be able to.
I think they should too. Damn it. You're absolutely correct. We'd be much healthier.
You can get your chiropractor covered a lot of times.
I'd pay a high copay to do that, to get massages.
Me too.
Yeah, exactly. We wait till we're broken down and then they deal with it rather than preventative care. But again, insurance is forced to pay for it because the science is overwhelmingly true that it is an illness. It's a disease, okay? All right. But still there's that punishing thing, even though punishing has not worked for all these centuries. Try to punish an addict into recovery, and it just doesn't work. I'll give you a couple of other things we do in treatment centers that I've been warned about by my teachers. Don't call them dirty when they don't pass a drug test. Don't say dirty or clean. Just say positive or negative. Language is so important for its ability to shame and to stigmatize, Having people to go to meetings and make them have their paper signed. I would say the majority of treatment centers out there are doing that. You know what my patients do with that, Dan?
Cheat.
Yeah, they sign them themselves. Did you ever do that?
Yes, I did.
Yes, you did.
I didn't do it on my last go around. I have done it in the past. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And did they question it, or did they just?
No, they don't even ask a single thing. And I've
So
heard that
what
story
are we
over and over
doing here,
again from the
right?
people
What is the
who-
point of that? The point is we're going to make you do this, right? Supposedly. But you can't make an addict or an alcoholic do anything. That's the first thing they don't understand. And then secondly, to me, it puts a punishing aspect on the one lifeline that they're going to need when they're ready.
Yeah.
If the courts send them to AA and they're forced, they're going to always associate AA with punishment and with the courts. And then when they're ready to die, they won't go. So do not take that away from them. I think it's a bad precedent.
Yeah.
Now, I do think P-tests that we do and testing to make sure, see what people's levels are, and if they're struggling, I don't do it out of trying to bust them, but I will tell you what the doctors come to me and say, well, y'all should really be doing it this way, and you should be looking at this and this. They're going to cheat. If they're going to cheat, they're going to cheat. It
Addicts
always
are gonna
comes out.
cheat.
It always comes out. My patients are so weird. They think they're getting away with it. It's like, I will know. I'm one of you all. I see you every day. A pattern becomes evidence, and over time you're like, duh, I know what you're doing. Right? Before they even know what they're doing. But, you know, again.
You do. You know what they're doing before they even know what they're doing. I've seen it over and over again.
But don't punish them anymore. It doesn't work. Even your own parents. Let's move on to the next category. So we talked about doctors and psychiatrists. Parents, God bless them, for years they'll be telling you, get sober, get sober, get sober. You get sober. And then you go and you do it, and they start giving you shit. What do you mean you're going to your meeting?
Yeah.
Well,
We've got this going on.
it's the
tonight.
dog's birthday today. We were going to have cake.
We've got things to do.
And then the patient believes that stuff. Guys, I had a patient just recently, barely getting a start. Like this poor patient, I'm not going to identify, was trying. And I said, you need to come to this meeting tonight. We're going to hook you up with a sponsor. You will be on your way. We're going to save your life. And this person looked me right in the eye and said, I have to go to my son's baseball game tonight.
Yep.
How many times does that happen to you, Dan?
All the time, man. There is all the time something more important to do.
Uh-huh. And yet they know they want to get sober, and the parents say, well, you need to get sober, but they're confusing them, telling them these other things are just as much of a priority, see?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I had a mother. This is the way my patient described it to me, so no offense, but this is what I'm reporting what I heard. My patient said, my mom is morbidly obese. She smokes like a chimney and has asthma and has an oxygen tank. And she's on the porch and she's yelling at me for doing heroin while she has a jelly donut in one hand and a cigarette in the other. Y'all can't see. Dan is laughing too.
Yes.
The hypocritical nature of that, right? And my patients are smart. If there's one thing addicts know, we know bullshit. We know hypocrites. I've known that since I was 1 year old. I could read a hypocrite, couldn't you?
Yep. One thing about us, there's some
Keen,
goofy stuff
man.
about us, man.
We are
but
keen on that. You're not going to fool us. So again, this person is suffering from addiction, and then they're telling their kid, oh, that's just an excuse to say you're powerless. Or you don't really have a disease. You need to pull your shit together and get a job. That's the big one parents always have, because they're tired of paying for them. I get that. They're tired of bailing them out. But still, a job is not going to cure their illness. But that's what they tell them. And then the patient gets confused. I had a father one time that was in my private setting trying to talk about, I've been telling my daughter for like 10 years, trying to get her sober. I've done everything I possibly could. I think she just doesn't have any willpower.
Yeah.
That's the problem, Dan. She needs some willpower.
That's it.
And pull herself up by her own bootstraps and she'll be okay. And I said, well, sir, can I ask you a question? He goes, what? And I could tell I was on thin ice. And I said, well, you and your daughter sound like you've been in this battle of wills about her getting well for 10 years, you said. Who's winning?
Yeah.
So who has the more willpower?
How are you doing that?
Who has the more willpower? It sounds like you haven't broken her. She's broken you. You're here almost in tears.
Yeah.
Right. So let's try something different. Okay. Again, they mean well, but you need to understand this is a family illness. I will say that till I'm blue in the face in my group, and then my group members will come in and complain about what their family's doing, and they look at me like, "Why are they doing this?" I said, "They're sick.
Why?
They're sick. They're sick. They're just as sick as you are." If you've never been around a codependent in your life, and you have, they're everywhere, they're sicker than us. I had an alcoholic/codependent recently say to me, I know I'm doing wrong, but I can't keep myself from doing it. I know it's not the right thing, but I can't stop. in terms of their choices and how they were handling a relationship in their life. And I was like, and then even they were saying some questions about why do addicts do what they do. And I said, oh, you really do have codependency. And you're an alcoholic and you're asking me that question about why they do that? It's just such a bizarre illness, but it affects the entire family. All right. Ultimately, the phrase I've heard from my group members over the years when it comes to these issues with mom and dad, and I say this with all the love in my heart, and I say this that I hope it helps save your life out there. They say to me, sometimes I just wish my family would shut the fuck up. Because they're not helping me. They're triggering me. It feels like they're sabotaging me. It feels like they're making me more thirsty or more capable, more likely I'm going to use. So I'm going to give you a cure for this moving forward here. You ready for this? This actually fixes a family that doesn't get it. I've seen it work 1,000 times. And Dan, if you've ever experienced this, let me know. Invite them to come to a meeting. Please invite them to come with you to a meeting. Now, at first, they're going to be like, go, because they think you're telling them they need to go to a meeting. Don't do that. They'll shut right down. They're just as much in delusion as you are about your drinking. They don't think they have a problem. They think you have the problem. You follow me? So we need to tell them, no, this means a lot to me. I'm doing this because it's really helping me, and it would be important to me to share this with you. I want you to come as my mom and see what I'm doing. And once they go, inevitably, may take 2 times to go, but they're going to hear another person say a story that's so similar, but it's not you saying it. They just have a block. They can't hear anything you're saying. They're mad at you. But when they hear this other person say it, their heart softens. Even wives, I've seen their heart soften, and suddenly my guy's back in the big bed, and he doesn't even deserve to be back in the big bed yet off the couch, but she's getting it. She's getting that he really is sick and that these people really are trying. Otherwise, you can't do it on your own. You need the group effect to do that. So please consider that. Invite them to come with you to a meeting. Check it out. And please do yourself a favor. Scope it out ahead of time. Make sure it's a good meeting. Not just a bitch and moan session. Make sure it's a good group. All right. Last category. If I think maybe more. There might be a couple more.
The famous Christopher Last.
Yeah, I know. There's always one.
Finally.
I just want to say one last thing. I'll be on my deathbed doing that. That's why I'm not going anywhere. I'll be hanging out going, oh, yeah, there's one more thing. The worst category can often be the still sick, suffering alcoholic or addict giving you advice about how you don't need to go to those meetings and you just need to switch to beer, or you just need to moderate, or you just need to smoke pot, or whatever the hell it's going to tell you. For those of you who haven't heard this on the podcast yet, that's called the crabs in a barrel effect. If you go to the docks and they fish crabs, that's not the proper term. What's the term for them? Caged crabs.
Catch crabs?
Yeah, catch crabs, I suppose. Farm them, whatever they're doing. They don't have to put a lid on the barrel when they bring them to dock. They just let them sit in there, because if one tries to crawl out, the rest of them pull them right back in.
They generally trap them.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, they trap them, correct. And, the thing is they don't mean to do it. It's just that they're miserable, and they don't. You getting well holds up a mirror that maybe they might need to look at themselves and do something, right? So they can't bear that honesty, and they're wishing you well, but by pulling you back, it confirms for their disease. See, it doesn't work. That AA stuff doesn't work, and then therefore they don't have to go. So it's less about you and it's more about them. It just, it's a weird effect, but I'll tell you a story about that one. We have a good friend of ours named Eddie, and Eddie reminded us of a story that's part of his story, that when he first came into AA and he got a little sobriety time together, he got with this sponsor. And this sponsor said, you're doing great and all that. I think you want to smoke a joint with me? And Eddie's like, well, what do you mean smoke a joint? You can't smoke a joint and be sober. And the guy looked at him and said, oh, that's a different program. In AA, we're not drinking. And Eddie goes, oh, okay. He just rolled over like an addict does. I have 2 years of recovery, or however much it was. Oh,
didn't take much to convince me.
Exactly. Just a little touch and rolls over. And he ended up smoking pot for several years and losing his recovery and getting stuck, and didn't realize this was a sick dude. This guy was still suffering because he hadn't really quit. So do not listen to anybody who's using anything, first of all, because their brain is damaged and their brain is being swayed by the chemical. So you're not getting the good full story. And go back to that idea that you want to find somebody who has what you want. And I'm going to give you some suggestions to find those people at the end. So I'm not going to leave you hanging here. I'm going to help you find some good people to really guide you and help you on this journey to get well. We also have well-meaning old-timers that we mentioned recently, but for those of you that didn't hear about it, those ones that say crazy things, Dan, like slow down, take your time in the steps. There's no rush.
You don't want to get well too fast.
You don't want to get too well too fast. Now, I'm going to ask you a question, Dan. I'm going to check your Big Book AA, Big Book Scholar skills.
I hate I am 1-2 pop quiz time.
Is there anything in the Alcoholics Anonymous book that Bill Wilson wrote that says it's not important, take your time, sit around, wait, don't have to jump right into the steps? Is there anything that implies that in the book? Or,
no, sir.
See, I'm going to make it even easier for you.
Yeah.
Or does the book use words like now, next, immediately, you're going to die?
That is exactly, over and over again, it is next, now, more action.
You're going to die.
Now.
You're going to die.
Or you'll die. These multiple death sentences and death threats are in that book.
Promises all over that book that if you don't do this stuff as fast as possible, you need to do it critical, now, immediately. Don't wait. Next. So where's he coming from? I guess he means well, but there's a guy that you're assuming, just like with doctors and psychiatrists, that just because you went to the meeting, you're assuming that guy's got time, that he must be a good old-timer who knows what he's talking about. No, time is no indicator whatsoever. So pay no attention to how much time they say they have. Watch what they say in the meetings and watch the way they comport themselves. Because there's a lot of sick people in the program, and a lot of them have never even done the steps. I've tried to put a statistic on it, and I try to be generous, and I'm going to go out there and say, Dan, I'm going to ask your opinion on this too. Maybe, I'm going to be generous today. 60% of the people at any given meeting have done the entire 12 steps, including sponsoring. But it's probably more like 30.
Our meeting is probably up in that neighborhood, and I think that's probably on the high side. But I don't think you walk around to most meetings where that percentage is that high. I don't believe.
And what you'll find instead, and back me up on this, tell me your experience. Well, I did some of the 4-step, and I wrote some things down. And I kind of talked to my sponsor about a couple of things, but we didn't really have a full session. And I kind of did some amends, the basics. I didn't want to piss my wife off, bought her a necklace, but they haven't done jack shit.
Or, my favorite, I took myself through the steps.
Oh, my God.
I hear that often, man.
I've got a patient doing that.
Yeah. And, we kind of talk about that a little bit here in the I Am One Too with your book and the directions that are in there. But it is much preferred that you have a guide to take you through.
Oh, my God. It's not. It's mandatory.
Yeah. You're going to have somebody.
It's mandatory because you've never done this before. Can you imagine anybody with the idiocy? Oh, I'm going to be a welder, so just give me the tools. I'm ready to go. Yep. Yeah, you're going to burn your arm off.
You're going to be at Harbor Freight and get me one.
He's going to sit there with his arm hanging out going, I didn't realize it was that hot.
Yep. And one of the things that I love about the Big Book, and it interests me greatly, is that it actually, you cannot do the steps out of the Big Book. You must have a guide. You need an interpreter. Their information is not in there, really. You can do some version of it, sort of. But there's completely missing things like the 4th column in the 4th step. It's not in there. It's buried. It is in there. You can mine it if you know what you're doing. But a newcomer doesn't know what he's doing. He can't mine that out of there. How you going to do this 3rd step prayer the way we do it, where it's actually impactful just by what's in that book by yourself? You can't. There's nothing in here about step 1 and 2.
How you can do a 5th step by yourself?
Yeah, you certainly can't do a 5th step
Bill
by
Wilson
yourself. And I've heard people say that they did.
Bill Wilson says a solitary self-appraisal seldom suffices.
Yep, seldom suffices. That's
an alliteration for you there.
Yep, no doubt.
So guys, let's not do all that, all right? Just because you go to a meeting, you're going to hear a lot of people say some odd things, and I need you to remember one thing as a mantra as you're going to navigate the rest of your recovery. Meetings are for sick people. Sick people go to meetings. Hence, you're going to hear a lot of sick-ass shit at meetings. What's that old joke, Dan? The guy comes out, the old-timer says, hey, well, how was the meeting? He says, well, I think it was some pretty good BB. And he goes, BB, what's that? He says, I don't know. It wasn't AA, but it was some BB.
Yeah.
So, just watch them. You'll get a vibe. You'll know who's got the good stuff and who doesn't. Plus, I'm going to give you some specifics here. But, it's
Squirrel?
your... What?
Did you get squirreled?
No, I was going to say, it's your disease. It's your
recovery.
life. It's your money, your job, your health, your kids, for God's sakes, your destiny, your future. Everything is hanging from this thread on who you're going to listen to. So I could not emphasize it more. This is really important. And I hope you're getting that from today. All right, so what do I do? As I said before, first thing if you're going to do in the professional world is ask for credentials, and you have that right. Where'd you go to school? What's your training on addiction specifically? Now, I will tell you the way I was taught. Old school doctors, if they're over a certain age, all they've had is 1 hour of addiction training in their entire career. And I'm going to ask you, Dan, do you remember 1 hour of class from high school?
No.
Okay. Well, today they've improved. They actually give them a full set, what do they call that? A full,
Like a semester or a
semester.
class?
That's the word I was looking for. They give them a full semester of addiction, pain management, training, and all that. Dan, do you remember one full semester of high school, really? Or let's go back, junior high school or even elementary school.
Not really,
Because that doctor's been in the field a long time. So you think he's going to remember elementary school?
No.
No, of course not. So you're looking for someone who specifically specializes in addiction because it is such an acutely complex disease. We do have the most complex disease that exists. Be proud of it. And you're going to get somebody who thinks they know what they're doing, and they're going to half treat you, or they're going to treat some aspects but not all aspects of your illness, and you're going to end up sick again. It's just like them giving you half-grade penicillin or a half-grade antibiotic. It's not going to work if it's not the good stuff. So ask for credentials and don't be shy about it. Just say, I just want to know where you're coming from. What's your approach to this? And do that with your family. It's the funnest thing in the world. It'll shut them up and they'll get mad at you, but it's okay because you'll get a laugh out of it. Your mom's yelling at you, your dad's yelling at you, and you say, oh, wait a minute. If you're offering advice, Dan, on my deadly disease, can I see your credentials?
What are your credentials?
I mean, have you been to school for it? Have you even watched a video on YouTube? Have you even read anything about addiction? Because, Mom, I can give you a link. And I'm swear to God, astounding how many parents have not even read about addiction. And they're the ones that are primarily trying to fix their loved one.
And they want to make a pie or
And
a
they
cake or they want to fix something, they'll be on YouTube looking it up, but not this.
Not this. And they won't go to a meeting, for God's sakes, because there's nothing wrong with me. All right, so you're in the rooms of the sick people, and you're trying to find a good person. You're trying to wonder, okay, this guy looks good to me. Listen with both ears. Pay attention during the meeting. It's my favorite thing to do, to say a prayer for the meeting and say, if there's something I need to hear here, let me hear it loud and clear, God. And if it's somebody I'm supposed to work with or approach, let me know, God. And if you're new, that is the easiest invitation to go say hello to somebody. Everybody that's new is shy. Everybody that's new doesn't know how to do all this stuff. So you go up to the person and you say, hey, Dan, my name is Joe. I really like what you said. Now, if I say that to you, what's that going to make you do?
Sure, man. I'm going to talk to you, man.
Damn right. I say some good shit. Yeah, you fed their ego. So you're in, man.
Absolutely.
All right. So you're not sure that's a good guy, but you're just talking to him. You're just feeling him out. Then after you feel him out, you go over to this other guy over here and say, hey, I was talking to Steve over here. You know Steve? Yeah. How long you been coming here? 11 years? You know Steve pretty good. What do you think about Steve as a sponsor? Now, Dan, if someone came to you and they said, we'll say Joe Blow, because I want to identify anybody and get their feelings hurt. I'm thinking about asking Joe Blow to be my sponsor, and you know Joe Blow works a shit program. What are you going to do for that
I'm
newcomer?
telling the truth.
And what would you say?
I'm going to say something like, well, Steve's a good guy. Nothing wrong with him, but I think I can help you find somebody better, somebody would be a better fit for you.
And would you even go so far
nature.
to say that, maybe his program isn't the best and I want the best for you, something like that?
Maybe, but I probably wouldn't
Try
knock
not
the
to
dude.
judge
I
him.
would probably try to skate a little bit and be just stay off of that and just offering that, hey, man, I can help you find somebody that would be a better fit.
That's why I
Now
like
it
to
matters
get...
how close I might, it just matters what the deal was. If I didn't know this guy at all,
Right.
I probably wouldn't go there. If I had a little bit of relationship with the guy, I might be a little bit more straightforward about it. That, hey, man, that guy don't really have the recipe the rest of these guys got that you see in here, so let's get a guy that's got the recipe.
Now, I'm glad. That's why I like to talk to Dan, because it opens up new avenues of conversation. Maybe even say something to the effect of, well, what are you looking for in a sponsor? Tell me what would work for you. And then you can kind of slightly say, well, that guy really may not have what you're looking for. But you're not really putting the guy down, but you're just trying to sway him in another direction a little bit. But they will tell you the truth, I promise you. You talk to other people, if you ask around enough, and it keeps bubbling up the same, yes, this is a good decision, no, you better not do it. That's our higher power talking to you right there.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be blind about it. And I know that scares so many of my patients, thinking I'm picking somebody for life.
Yep.
No, you're not, dude.
No.
You're just giving them a chance.
Yep.
It's like an audition.
And it's getting in the door, it's getting your feet wet in the beginning. It's making a beginning, You always got a chance to, if this ain't feeling right, man, you can switch it up.
The other big tool I'm a big fan of is watching what they do outside of the meeting, and that would be out in the parking lot. I can't tell you, people who've come to my group and said, man, the speaker, he was fantastic, and he moved me so much, and I thought, this is the guy God has sent for me to work with, and I was going to approach him, and then I was in a parking lot, and I saw he was selling bootleg stolen items out of the trunk of his car. And I'm like,
or just he flashes out of there and doesn't hang around,
Yeah.
He's just gone all of a sudden,
Or he's hitting on the newcomer girl. He's hitting on the girl in her first day. These are all like clear signs. Maybe this isn't the dude to think about. But to sum up, it's all about, you've got to be very careful and very discerning about who's going to be treating your illness. It's very unique to you. Everything is hanging from that thread. And don't be shy about stepping up for yourself and saying, hey, even if you have a sponsor now and you're not getting your needs met, how often do we see that, Dan? And the guy hangs on to him. It's like, you don't have an obligation to that person. You have an obligation to God and your loved ones and yourself to save your life. This is not a personal thing to change a sponsor, right?
Right.
So please ask questions. And as we say that, we take questions on this podcast, which you're going to hear a few at the end of the podcast. So here's the address. Send them to iam12, the word recovery, @gmail.com. That's iam12, the word recovery, @gmail.com. And we'll help you navigate whatever your situation might be with this. But remember, ultimately, you're going to be the product of what your teacher gives you. So I listen to things like, what's their tone of voice? How do they come off?
Are they smiling? Are they laughing?
Are they smiling? How do they walk through life? How do they treat the newcomer is a big one for me.
Do they appear to have that sense of serenity and peace in their demeanor? Do they seem to be content?
I mean, I know people that have done this in front of me where they'll be like, to the newcomer, they'll be like, hi, how you doing? Hey, welcome, I'm glad you're here. And the newcomer walks away and says, hey, I know his head from a hole in the floor, from a hole in the ground. And I'm like, dude, he's fucking new. What are you saying about this guy? It's just instant turn off, right? Yeah. So that's a good marker too. How are they treating the new people? So any thoughts on this, Dan? And tell me a little bit about your own journey, about who might have tried to give you advice and say, you don't need to go to AA, you can do it other ways, or whatever the idea might be.
Well, one of the things I noted here was that when I first, back in 2011, when I first started talking about having a problem, majority of my family members refused to acknowledge that. They would like, nah, man, you're not that bad. And would like really trying to talk me out of getting help. Now, I was convinced, and actually my then wife was also, she did not balk 1 minute when she was also
she knew.
But there was a piece of surprise in her. It's like, I think there was some willful blindness going on where until I acknowledged it, she knew something was wrong, but she didn't know what was wrong. And it was actually, there was a comfort with her that like, okay, now we have a defined problem and we can work on a defined problem. I actually saw that in her and spoke to her since then that, she didn't know what was wrong with me. She just thought I was a effing asshole, And then it was like, oh, there's a problem. We can work on a problem. We got a problem. We can find a solution to it. And so she was very supportive.
Can I insert a comment?
Sure.
It's interesting how she's a nurse, right?
Yeah.
So there's no doubt she's seen alcoholics and addicts, but she didn't put two and two together with you.
Not with me.
Isn't that interesting?
It's that forest for a tree.
Yeah, you're too close to it. That's what it is.
Yep. And she didn't have any formal training in that specifically.
There you go.
She knows a whole lot more now than with me. Frankly, I'll say I have taught her a lot. And, we went through that with Carissa, so she learned a lot from me. And she actually said, hey, this is your department. I'm going to be leaning on you for what to do. And that was okay. But it was interesting, like mom and dad and cousins. Of course, these cousins were drinking with me too, you know, so that was kind of like that part of what you were saying earlier about the people who are actually still using, and that mirror. My podcast guest on the Spiritual Underground last night, Yossi, he was talking about like, and I can't remember how he put it, but he was talking about like almost the same ways like we've got this, you know, these this genetic disposition and things like this. He says we have like mirror molecules, or that happens with us. We cannot help but to look at other people as a mirror, and it's like a piece of our nature, you know, like an evolutionary thing that we've developed. But so when those guys would hear me that I was saying I had a drinking problem and I was getting help, it was just obvious that they would deny that, because they were right side by side with me, you know, and they didn't know, well, if Dan's got a problem, then
doesn't look good for us.
Yeah, doesn't look good for us. And this thing about your parents, you know, when you're doing this, I believe, and I actually am a parent, so I have a little piece of it, and actually knowledge of that, and I can see it. It's terribly hard for parents to like acknowledge that you're an adult. They still kind of, you know, they spent a good chunk of time with you as a child. You were a child, and they kind of hang on to that, and you know, they're trying to still manage you and fix you and do the stuff that a parent's supposed to do, you know, that we think we're supposed to do, of like, okay, here, I will fix you, here's what you need to do, regardless if they know a goddamn thing about what's going on. They will still try to manage our problems. You know, I see that too in newcomers and people that's coming around. It's interesting how involved their parents get in their recovery from a non-helpful standpoint, really not in a supportive way. Now and again you see some really beautiful things happen when parents actually get on board and show up. That's one of the things that's so cool about inviting these people to birthday night at the Spiritual Underground, is that people that aren't even celebrating or anything will bring mom or dad just so they can see what we're doing there. You know?
See, I had that experience where one of my sponsee's mothers insisted on meeting me before I could sponsor. Well, but the guy was 25 years old or whatever. It's like he's an adult now, you know?
Yeah,
I mean, I got it.
I see what you're saying there.
I got it, and I didn't have a problem. But again, it was part of that overstepping your bounds.
Well, let me see who this guy is.
Yeah,
you know? Let me vet him, and I'll tell you if he's worthy of my
Go over there and
child.
brown nose mom's ass. I'm used to doing that.
Yeah.
But
and that happens pretty often, too, man. I've had other people like counselors and people who run a halfway house, and I got one guy's an airline pilot, and the airline people that deal with substance abuse issues wanted to talk to me. You know?
That's interesting.
And I was happy to do so.
Yeah, I'll bet you could show them the way we do it.
Yeah.
The really interesting dynamic that happens the most to watch out for people is that your parents will interpersonalize your journey that they failed.
Yeah,
That's the thing. They feel like I must have done something wrong, and that's why my son's an addict.
My parents both.
No, again, that's that denial, not lack of understanding. Because if you say on one hand it's genetic, and they'll nod their head, but then they'll say, "But I should have done something." No, it's acceptance. You've got to accept this is genetically based. Could have given him the best childhood in the world, and he still would end up the same way.
Yeah, it took me a few amends with my father to get him off the hook, and I do believe today that he finally has. That process has allowed him to unhook himself from thinking, because he bought me beer underage and he drank around me, you know, and he let me sit at a bar when I was in my 10 years old until midnight and watch guys drink, you know, and he thinks all that stuff had something to do with me. You know, he was wanting to take it on the chin about what he did here. I'll stop with this thing. It's incredible to me that people start defining how fast you should do the work when the book is plain. You know, it is. There's nothing in there. And, you know, we know that the only real timeline in there is that part in the employers where they say that I could have returned a well man in 6 months. And that's about the time our recipe plays out. That's the only timeline. And people that end up saying this stuff about going slow, I think it's just plain old human procrastination. And it's interesting that old timers and people that have actually done the work will come off with that stuff, or at least pretend to have done the work, come off with this stuff. You know, there's people are just making crap up.
And that's not what the actual old timers did, for those who don't know.
No, they flew through it.
Well, yeah, but the first night, to even go to the meeting, you had to be vetted. You had to go upstairs with your guy that was going to be your patron, or your, what's the word for it? not an advocate, but the guy was going to introduce you to the group, and he's going to take you on, but he would screen you. And so you had to go upstairs and tell your story to prove you were a real alcoholic and that you are powerless and that your life has turned into a shit show, unmanageable.
And you're ready.
And then you had to say, are you ready to do some work? Because we ain't going to fuck with you if you ain't going to do no work. So that's step 2. I'm make a decision. Okay, I think I'll do this. And then 3 is make a decision. But 2 is part of that. And then 3, it's like they would get on their knees and do the prayer, whether you were ready for it or not.
Yeah. Then you could come to the meeting.
Yeah. And then the guy would stand up at some point during the meeting, as I've been told from the history from some of the best, and he would say at one point, I want to introduce John, and I'm going to preach. Didn't have the word sponsor. Brought him to the meeting, and he's a good guy, so welcome, John, and that's it. He's in the group. And you can't blame them, man. They're having these meetings in their home, and they're protecting this thing because finally they're not drinking. So they got to be careful not to even come in there and ruin it, right?
Yep.
So we want to hear from you about this. How are you navigating your early recovery? And I don't care if you hear this 10 years from now. You can write us a comment in the comment section, or you can send us an email. And we do answer the emails every week. We don't identify your identity. You'll be safe. And you can ask us any questions about, why did this old timer say this to me? Or why did my mom do this? It's because she's sick. And one last thing I'll say about that is particularly about spouses. I think it's fair to introduce the option to them that they get well too. Now you got to be careful because it comes off wrong if you're like pushing it, like, well, you have the problem. They're going to come right back at you and slam you hard. But if you come at them and say, hey, here's the deal. I want to share what's going on in my life. I'm going to this group and you're not allowed. So I want to share what's going on in there. I'm learning a lot of stuff. And they're telling me this is a family condition, which means you've been terribly affected by my disease. And I feel really horrible about that. And I'm sorry about that. But they also told me that you finding your own journey for recovery and doing whatever works for you to get better, you deserve that. You don't deserve to be in that hell for the rest of your life. And they also told me that if you don't get any help, I could be sober 5 years and get all better, and you're still going to be back here in this pain. So I want you to think about that. There are books available. I've had people buy the book and leave it on the coffee table to see if they ever read it for Al-Anon. And also then go to their therapist, or they can start watching videos and reading other books. But at least they're going to go on that journey to recognize that I am one too, to say the least. And I've been affected by this sickness, and I want to get better. I don't want to live with this the rest of my life. And God forbid, if your partner keeps relapsing, you can still get well and move forward, right, Dan?
Yes, you can.
All right. So thanks for joining us for that. If you have any questions, again, send them in to us. We're going to transition now to our little period where we answer questions from you about whatever's going on in your life. So then let's get right to it. First, we have 3 great questions today. First one says, hey there. Hey there, Dan. Long-time listener, first-time caller. Laugh out loud. Corny, but funny. Thanks for bringing the juice every week. It really helps me get through my week. Thank you. Appreciate that. My question is, why do we not explain to newcomers how the whole sponsor-sponsee thing really works? For instance, when I first came into and got the program and got a sponsor, I didn't understand why I had to call him every day. And he never called me. Well, we'll talk about that. I thought it would be the other way around. Maybe share with the newcomers how this process works so they might stick around a little longer. Thanks for the advice, and keep on changing the world. One day at a time, one person at a time. I agree with that. How's the process work? Well, everybody has a different approach, and I know Dan's going to take whatever approach, which is be similar to mine because he's in my camp. But you do get these sponsors that are like, well, it's their program and they need to work it. And I just think that's lazy. I'm just going to call it for what it is. I think they're forgetting how hard it is for the newcomer to call and how hard it is for the newcomer to get through those first days and open up to a new person. So I try my best to make it easier for them and let them know that what we're trying to do at first is establish a relationship. Because if we don't have any sort of communication, you're not going to call me when you're in trouble. And I want to make it easier for you to call me because when the moment comes, that phone's going to weigh 500 pounds. And you're not going to call me unless we've already spent time talking about women and sports and how was your day at work and fuck the boss and, all that shit in the news. And that's what we do. We build a relationship. It's not all working the program all the time. And, I try to loosen my guy up and let him know he can be honest with me when he's telling me everything's great. I'll immediately say, screw you, man. It's not great. Tell me what's really going on. And I'm trying to just make a connection, because that's your lifeline. You've got one person that when the shit hits the fan, you feel safe to talk to. They're not going to judge you. They're not going to yell at you and lecture you. And that's another approach a lot of sponsors take, is they're too busy handing out platitudes and they're not having a relationship with their sponsee. So the whole process of calling every day is just to ingrain that habit in your neural net. And once you've done it 2 weeks, you'll find it amazingly easier. I've asked all my patients that. I say, well, I thought it was dumb at first, but now I kind of like it. They all say the same thing. Like, they enjoy talking to their sponsor. And then after that, the process is your sponsor is a guide who's been there before, and he can take you through the work because he's already done it. You don't want somebody who's unqualified, who's only read the book. You want somebody who's done it. And then they can share their personal experience, strength, and hope to guide you through the process to your best success, because they already know what works and what doesn't from their experience, from their sponsor's experience, and everyone they know in the program, right? So, Dan, what do you think about this and how this whole sponsor-sponsee thing works and these different approaches? Because, again, the joke I have is everybody goes to a different sponsor school. And then I have to clarify with my patients, there is no such thing as sponsorship school. Yeah, right. But it's who your teacher was, as we talked about in just the last segment. Whoever your teacher was is how you're going to come off.
I've heard you say platitude a couple of times, and I don't know what a platitude was, so I looked it up.
What's it say?
It says a couple things. The quality or state of being dull or insipid. And then I said, I don't know what insipid is.
Stupid.
Lacking in qualities that interest, stimulate, or challenge. Dull or flat. Lacking in taste or savor. And it also says a banal, I guess.
Banal.
Or banal, trite, or stale remark.
Okay.
Interesting. Well, I've heard you say it a couple times in here, and I was like, a couple weeks ago, I was like, what does that mean exactly?
So I would rephrase it to say it's a statement without any helpful meaning, but it's more serving the person, making them feel important, that they're smart or something. And it's like, dude, just don't hand me that shit. Give me something I can use.
Yeah.
So
I do like that. I like the call me everyday thing, but I also get it that there's got to be some flexibility in that some guys, and you can kind of read a guy, or once you've done this for a little bit, read a guy on like where he's at. There's some people that are so shut down and introverted, that they're going to need a little bit more, call them kind of stuff. And I try to make it a balanced thing too. It's not like, call me and I ain't calling you. That is not the way I'm doing it. And if I miss their call, I do try very hard to get back to them in a pretty timely manner and that kind of thing. But also, the one of the pieces behind it for me is too that I heard somebody say, the power to change your life was within your reach, but you got to do the reaching. And at least you got to do some of the reaching. So I'm trying to get a guy also, and I totally agree that I'm relationship building, but this is a program of action, and I need you to take some action that you mean this, Mm-hmm. And if you can't, that very first time that I meet a guy and he talks to me about it, and I say, call me tomorrow. If he can't call me tomorrow, again, knowing a little bit and being able to read him, and what kind of person this is, sometimes he's got his chest all balled out and he's, acting tough guy stuff, and then he can't call me tomorrow. Well, that's a problem. You need to be able to do that. If it's a guy that's more laid back and has trouble, then I might, I just swim in the water that's given to me, and try to walk it out the best I can according to what I think this guy needs. Mm-hmm. How it works, that like they just asked that little bit of stuff there, but that's a big question on just how this thing,
try to especially explain it to the newcomer how it works. But there's that other aspect where we have the saying in the program that whenever anybody reaches out for the hand of AA, I want it to be there. Yeah. So I feel like some old timers aren't willing to bend, and again, just because they've forgotten what it was like for them. Yeah. And I don't know how you could forget about how sick you were and how difficult it was to ask for help. But I have no problem calling my dude, and to be frank about it,
I try to balance it.
I'll do it out of selfish reasons. You want to know why? because this is the window I got to call you. I don't got a window to talk to you later. So it might not be our regular time, right? And I get out of work a half hour early. I'm calling him to see if he's available.
Yeah.
I
know Scott Lee talks about that, that this guy's brand new, man. He can't call you. You've got years of recovery. You can pick up the phone and call him. I can call anybody, and I don't have any problem with
for me. I like when Scott Lee says that. It's nothing for me to call somebody, but for him, it's the whole.
It's a whole thing.
Yeah. So, and reassure him too, I would add on, that this is not like written in stone anywhere. It's not a perfect process, and that there's a perfect fit sponsor for everybody out there. So if it doesn't work with me, it can work with somebody else. I'm more than happy to tell a guy, and he's all concerned about temporary sponsor. Will you temporary sponsor is this thing that came up, I'd say about the time I came in AA. It wasn't much, but it started coming around, this temporary sponsor in the 80s. And it was this idea that it was from the treatment centers. It was not from AA, it was from the treatment centers. We're going to make it easier so that a newcomer doesn't feel committed. And he can just get a temporary, no. I just look at the guy and say, well, just walk with me a while, dude. Call me tomorrow. We'll just walk with me a while. See if you like what you get. If you don't, fire my ass.
Yeah.
But I got to warn you, that goes both ways.
Yeah.
You don't do what I want to expect out of you, I'm going to fire your ass too.
Yep. Well, I had a guy call me not long ago about the temporary sponsor thing, and we talked about it for a minute, and he was in a place that was requiring him to have a sponsor. And I said, okay, brother, you can call it for those purposes. He sounded genuine. I was getting the right vibes off of him. And I said, yeah, you can tell them I'm your sponsor. I can't really do it right now, but I will be your sponsor here for a week or so until we can get you somebody else, and you can satisfy their stuff so that you can continue to live there and abide by their rules.
Oh man, if he kept a roof over his head, that was a good move.
Yeah.
So keep working at it. Send us more questions on it, and any comments from anybody else, we'd be happy to hear. It's a sacred relationship. It's one of the greatest gifts of the program, that sponsor, but I'm just in the school where it's like, we're going to get to know each other, man. We're going to share our most intimate secrets, and I want to make sure that we've talked about almost all your stuff before we even get to the fifth step. That way the fifth step will be a piece of cake for you, because I already know. You've already told me half your stuff. So, yeah, and just by calling me every day, we just end up talking about stuff.
Yep.
You've already gotten half their fifth step done. All right, second letter for today. Let's get into it. This is a good one, actually. It's short but sweet. How do you make time for 2 programs? As I mentioned, rampant alcoholism is in my family. However, my AA sponsor has suggested I start going to Al-Anon. So how do I make time for both? Do I drop an AA meeting? Now, this is exciting. This is nothing to dread. To me, as an old-timer, in my experience, this is the most exciting thing that happens. It means you're ready for the next level. The next level of what? Of your growth, of your future learning and development, and you're ready for a change. One of the worst things you could do is stay stuck, right, and not be open to new information or new things. But this idea that I'm being called because I have issues in my life, sometimes that's the way it works. God doesn't create the adversity, but God will sure point it out. And then it's like, okay, well, it's time to go to this and deal with this. Meeting a new meeting. Now, there is a special phrase for you all that get to go to AA and Al-Anon. Al-Anon being the sister program of the program, where we welcome anybody that knows an addict or an alcoholic. You are welcome in Al-Anon to learn skills to help you, but also help deal with them. But it's really about your journey of recovery in Al-Anon. And they'll call you a double winner. So congratulations. You're a double winner and you don't know it. So yes, it is okay to drop a meeting to make room for a meeting you really want to go to. I would just scope it out carefully and talk to your sponsor. There can be certain reasons why you choose to go to one meeting over another. And one of the best reasons to make that decision would be, I feel like I'm of more service in this meeting in terms of carrying the message to the newcomers versus another meeting where maybe there's other old timers and they could carry the message. But in this meeting, I feel like if I leave, it might fall apart. I know that's ego, but you know what I'm saying? We can tell when there's like not that many strong people in here, and I want the newcomer to feel like somebody's in here carrying a good message, and that might be a reason to keep that meeting. But ultimately, if you go to a bunch of meetings in Al-Anon, you find one that you really like, it might be time to sacrifice and say, I'm just going to go do this for now. It's hard. Change is hard in the program, and change is hard for other people. You know, I had to make the decision that I was going to work on the book and leave a meeting, and I had to just finish this book. And somebody still asked me Tuesday night, when you come back to the meeting? I'm like, I got to do this book, and I'm just being called to do it. So it's good. It's for growth. It's for everybody's good in the long run. But change is hard because we miss people. We want them to keep coming. So what do you think about this, Dan, having to fit in another program? I've done that in the past with other programs. I checked out Overeaters Anonymous. I checked out Sex Addicts Anonymous in my early recovery. It was fun. I learned a lot about myself checking out other programs.
Yeah, I did. In the beginning, I was going to NA meetings and AA meetings, and, I had the typical newcomer thing about not sure where I belonged, and I had some people telling me that, I should try out both and see what worked for me. Where I felt at home, and frankly, I just never felt at home in NA meetings. And I know quite a few people who have been in the program for a while that do both. They do both Al-Anon and AA pretty successfully. After a while, I went to a shit ton of meetings in the beginning. Man, I was going to 8 of them a week when I had that ankle bracelet on. But then, over time, you don't necessarily need that kind of level of care kind of stuff. So these people, like I know people that like go to an AA meeting a week and they go to an Al-Anon meeting a week, and they seem to be staying pretty stable doing both of those things. So, I think there's always a place for some balance, and there's always, like we say, to continue to, as I bring on people to the spiritual underground that are not really 12-step kind of people, we must continue to grow spiritually, and that will be one avenue where you can satisfy that. You can continue to grow by entering into another program. And I've also seen people that have developed stuff they didn't realize is, it's the peeling of the onion. They got the dope and booze off of them. They realize they need to maybe go to SA, or maybe they need to go to OA. They peel the onion back and they get this monkey off their back, and they realize this other monkey is laying underneath of there, and they do something else. But it can be, if you've got a busy lifestyle, that tends to happen once you get recovered. You get a lot of stuff to do. You get a lot going on, of good stuff too, and I've been in that position where I've had to choose what good thing I wanted to let go of so I could do some other good thing.
And the other question that was here was, how do I make time for both? And I think if you'll look at it from, this is an investment in your future. Because I can ask Dan, has there ever been a time in recovery, not before, but in recovery, where you said, I'm really feeling called to do this, and I want to go check this out, and I think I'm going to go over here and put my energies into this for a while. And even if it doesn't work out for me, at least I had the experience, and I know it will add to my development, my character, my personality, my future. Has there ever been a time that didn't pay off for you, Dan?
No, it's paid off for me almost every
time.
Single time.
Yoga teacher,
I went
Mankind Project.
Yep, right. And, I didn't stay with either one of those things, really, and I never had any intention to actually be a yoga teacher. I was talking to somebody about that today. I just wanted to go do it for the growth that it provided me. And the same thing, I didn't know what I was going to do with Mankind, and it just ended up being that was something that was a season in my life, and I grew, and it was great for me. And I've, come back home for the most part. I always, come back home to AA.
I've always admired people who have that spirit too. Like Bill Burr, the comedian, just decided he wanted to get his helicopter pilot's license. It's like, why? And all of his friends immediately are telling him, you're going to die. And he's like, I got to do this. And he did. And I don't know, that always impresses the hell out of me.
Yep.
So take a chance. It's worth it.
Yep.
And it's an investment in you. Don't worry about what other people say. So good on you for asking the question.
It's kind of like going back to school or any other kind of thing like that. Do those things.
And don't feel the regret of leaving so much as more of the excitement of where you're going. Try to look forward with that, because it's going to be good in the long run. All right, let's talk about this one, the short but sweet, that's really good to end on here. Dan, is there a healthy way to let out anger? Well, I know one thing for certain. It is definitely unhealthy to not let out anger. So let's talk about anger as a topic, and maybe we should do a whole podcast, but anger is just a human emotion. It gets a bad rap. Anger will help you build pyramids. Anger can get a lot accomplished in this world. It's a great motivator. It gets a bad rap because people get hurt and people use their anger in unhealthy and destructive ways. But ultimately, anger is just another feeling, and you have to express it. You have to get it out. Now, you don't want to yell at the kids if they don't deserve it. Again, I said if they don't deserve it. Sometimes I don't know. I don't have kids, but you know how it goes. And, sometimes we just need to go out and take a baseball bat like Scott Lee does and beat an old couch in the backyard, which I freaking love. Or I heard another guy talk about he had old plates that he would buy at auction that were like pennies a piece, and he would take them out and shoot them with his gun, or he would throw them against a tree and break them. Yeah, like we have a smash room in town, and this is not that big a city, so I'm gonna imagine you all have one of those too, a break room, smash room, whatever they call it, and you can pay to go in there and take out your anger. So maybe the person who wrote this, maybe that's something you need to do again, and it just builds up. There's not really. If you're at work all day, how am I going to express my anger in a healthy way? I'm not allowed to. I'm supposed to be a professional, right? So we carry this stuff, and it tenses you, and it catches up with you, makes you sick. So I think the most healthiest thing to do is, first of all, let it out. And then the most important thing is just make sure you're not hurting anybody else in that process. So let's talk a little bit about anger and how hard that is for people to deal with in recovery, thinking, I shouldn't be angry because the 4-step says anger's the dubious luxury. Yeah. No, it doesn't say that. What does it say, Dan?
I don't know that I can quote it.
Oh, it's pop quiz.
At the moment.
It's the grouch and the brainstorm. Yeah. These may be the dubious luxury. He never says anger. The way he says about anger, not to feel it, not to not have it, we must be free of it. So what he's implying is we can't be owned by that shit. And that's what he's saying with the grouch and the brainstorm, sitting there all day long grumbling to yourself like the Grinch. We can't afford that. We'll drink. We also can't afford to be the guy that's prison. I'm not angry at nothing. Then we go off like a match. That's a brainstorm. And then you can't be that guy either. So those guys get owned by their anger. So he's saying we had to be free of it, which is expressing it. We got to get it out.
I had a friend that says you have to be free with it because it's going to happen. And that same kind of, I think that's the same energy you're expressing there. That I'm going to have it, but I have to, even though I'm going to have it, I still have to be free, even though it's on me.
So give me one idea of what you do with your anger. Maybe chop wood at this cabin. Yeah. But one of the things that works for me after work is I'll crank up some music, and I'll sing and scream like a maniac to some Zeppelin song or something like that. And I mean like fierce to the point where I'm choking. And it's like, oh, I got high off that. I feel good now, Yeah,
I'll yell and scream in a safe place. Mm-hmm. But I was sitting there thinking, I just don't get mad too much. I don't get angry very often anymore. It's just not like worth allowing that to happen in me. Sometimes I'll get anxious and frustrated, but the anger is not something that usually rises up. But usually yelling and screaming is how I discharge it.
Mm-hmm. My anger is, obviously, I work in dark energy all day long, so I'm frustrated because I can't, what do I do with that? I got to discharge it. And then the other thing is just the world, man. I don't like the way the world's going. I don't like what's happening with stupid people.
Share it with somebody safe.
Yeah, share it and rant. Like, it's got to be safe, though. Like, they're not going to,
fix me.
We're so fortunate to have that in our relationship where I feel completely 100% secure that you're not going to use my candidness against me. And some people don't even have that with their spouse. Yeah. That they can be entirely candid, right?
Yep, right. Yeah.
So just please get it out. And you say, is there a healthy way? Yes, let it out some way. And last of all, what do we always say as a final note? Call your sponsor.
Call your sponsor.
Call your sponsor. See what he thinks. Talk to him about what's going on, because I'm going to guess this person might have some anger that they need to discharge. Yep. So call your sponsor, ding-a-ling, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah. As of this recording, the Monday after this day right here, I am actually going to visit Scott Lee, and he's going to be doing an anger and grief workshop with me. So grab some tools while I'm there.
Maybe he'll let you beat on his couch.
I'm pretty sure that's what we're going to do.
I'm excited, man. We need to have a whole podcast on some of that.
Yeah.
Maybe. We'll talk about it.
I agree. Okay. I definitely will be reporting on it.
Okay, cool. Scott Lee, you can find him on YouTube, Scott L. from Nashville. Just fantastic, top-grade AA soldier and teacher. I learned so much from him, and thank God for his presence. He really changed my life. So he's one of my biggest heroes and mentors, as well as you as well, right?
Yep, he definitely is. I'm excited as can be, and he has just done so much for my recovery, more than I can ever express to him and what he's done. But I think he's getting a handle on that, because I think that's part of the reason why he invited me to come down.
And what's cool about it?
Been on my podcast a couple times, and he also has about a half a dozen books that he's written that I was totally unaware that he had actually done that until I talked to him the last time and got the book list. So if you want that list of books, you can send us an email and I'll get it to you.
And what he's talking about is right over his right shoulder, there's the Spiritual Underground podcast sign. So available on all platforms if you want to look up Scott Lee and check out the Spiritual Underground podcast. It's been fun for me, we'll just end on this, to watch his journey of change because, being former military and then softening over the years, and now he is a teddy bear, in his older age, and I just think that's awesome. And again, it's my argument for why the 12 steps, I believe, is going to save our world. Nothing changes, to come wrap around where we started today, folks. Nothing changes people over time. Do you agree, Dan?
Yes.
More profoundly than this, living by these principles.
I agree wholeheartedly.
I mean, I'm a completely different person than I was when I started this journey. And I like the person I am today. I think Scott would say the same about himself.
Yep.
So if you want change, you want something better, join us. As my friend Travis says, you can find him on our podcast. Travis, join us. All right. Well, we like to end every session with just one reminder. Please comment, subscribe, or like. Any piece you can do will help us raise our analytics so that we're not hidden in the YouTube zone, the deep, dark basement, and nobody can find us. And we want as many people as possible to be able to have access to these tools. So please share it on Facebook, share it with your family, anybody that might be able to use this. I don't know if you're struggling with your mom or dad telling you what to do. You could maybe be bold enough to send this to them and let them hear me say it instead of you say it to them. But just tell them to shut the fuck up. In all love, let the doctors handle it. Let the experts, the specialists handle it. All right, we like to end each episode with the Serenity Prayer. So if you would like to join us at home, it will change your energy. It's not a bad little thing to do. You ready, Dan?
I am.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Just for today. Keep coming back. It works if you work it, and you die if you don't. Woohoo! Come back and see us next week. We love you. Don't give up. We got your back.